Good evening. It is November 28, 2022, 6:02. We're on the second floor of City Hall for the Common Council meeting. Media has been notified. Agenda has been posted. Clerk, please take the roll call.
David Holt.
Here.
Stephen Jopek.
Here.
Eileen Daniel. Carrie Michalowski.
Here.
Gerald Anderson.
Here.
Thomas Barnett.
I am here.
Tom Kelly.
Here.
Leanne Felton.
Here.
Chris Hannes.
Here. We do have quorum. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Barnett, your pitch is off a little bit. I just want to let you know. Okay, moving on to public comment. Is there anyone for public comment? Okay, not seeing none. Any public comment from any other alders? Not seeing none. Moving on. Mayor's comment. So we're doing a public hearing, which would be for the taxi service. So currently, if per our budget, our taxi service would run at a deficit of $71,426.19 projected. So we're doing a public hearing for a rate increase for our taxi service, which it's been multiple years since that has increased. There's really no records at City Hall of that ever being increased. So we're just having a public hearing to see what people think and what's their concerns or thoughts. Does anyone have any concerns or thoughts at this time? Or question, Mr. Jopek?
Without addressing the deficit, because obviously that's something that needs to be addressed, what communities within Rhinelander most use it and would be most impacted by a increase?
Just to clarify, you said communities, so I don't...
Yeah, like as in
Oh.
the intersections within Rhinelander, so under the poverty line, those with disabilities, small families, like what groups of people particularly use the shared ride?
True. I'm not sure if we get that data from the company, but I might be wrong.
Well, let's clarify one thing. This is the public hearing. The council is going to be acting on this at the next meeting. So if you're speaking as a citizen at the public hearing, it's a very proper question to ask, Steve. If you're going to ask it as a council member, you should really wait till the council session. Do you understand the differential between the two? I don't mean to be a technocrat, but it's very important that this is the public hearing, and once we close the public hearing, then the council can discuss it when it comes on the agenda. And it has to be on the agenda for action at the next council meeting, because we have to give notice, which will give the communities that are interested a chance to come even to the next council meeting. But we can get you the information, it does exist, as to the percentage that use it, but probably the biggest users, to answer your question, are seniors and people with low income who are also getting supplemented fares, so they're probably not going to pay the full fares anyway.
Mr. Anderson?
I think the community would be interested in how much of an increase we're talking about. What is it now and what are we proposing?
I don't know if, Wendy, if you would be interested in that.
The information is going to be on the public notice that goes in the newspaper, but it's $1.25 per ride. Increase. So it'll go from $4 for adult fare to $5.25, and $3 for senior or disabled to $4.25.
Mr. Kelly?
Steve, City Attorney, do you remember when we changed cab companies if we didn't set a new rate?
That's the rate. Go ahead,
That's the rate
Wendy.
we have now.
We did
That's
not
only 2
set
years.
we did not increase the fares for the rides. We created an agency fare.
Okay.
Mr. Jopek?
With this increase of the $1.25, do we have like an estimate of how much that would bring the deficit down?
Yes, it'll bring it down to cover the local share of the 72,000.
Okay.
We, running was very good. We asked them to give us projected numbers based on if we increased it 50 cents, $1, $1.25, or $1.50. And we'd have to increase it by $1.25 to cover the local share.
Okay, so since it's a public hearing, I have to ask it 3 times. Does anyone else have any comments or questions regarding increased fares for the share ride taxi service? Oh, true. Sorry. So yeah, this was just kind of, yeah, sorry, blonde moment here. So this was just more comments, and we're going to have the public hearing on December 27th, technically.
Yeah, I'll repeat that again. December 27th, we'll have this on the agenda. There will be a public notice in the paper. So everybody that's listening, you'll have plenty of opportunity to talk to your alderpersons, and then you can speak at that 27th meeting, because it will be a public hearing at that time.
So now that I messed that up, that's my only mayor's comments for this meeting. Moving on to number 6, which is a presentation by Steve Sorensen on Common Council resolutions.
Yeah, you asked me to speak on the difference between an ordinance and a resolution, and I sent out, I think I sent to all of you kind of a memorandum on where the differential is. But let me make it very simple. An ordinance is something where you're changing the activity that you regulate. In other words, the easiest ordinance to think about is a speed limit. Speed limit is currently 25. If you wanted to change that to 30, you'd have to pass an ordinance, because it's regulating behavior. It's regulating the way that people act, and it imposes a rule or law that could potentially have a fine or a penalty. That's why zoning ordinances always have to be an ordinance. It's not a resolution, because you're changing the way a person can use their property. And if you don't do it, there's a penalty for not doing it. So if you think of an ordinance as not a statement of policy, but as a legislative action where you're changing the rules on how people are being regulated or how property is being regulated that has a potential of a penalty, that's really what an ordinance is. And so those are the city ordinances. For example, the way you establish how you operate is an ordinance, because you need to say, how do we as a body act, and how can we pass laws, and how can we do things as rules and have them be effective. That's an ordinance. Ordinances are meant to last until they're amended or changed. There's not a, this ordinance is in effect for 6 weeks. That's not an ordinance. An ordinance is theoretically forever. They're never forever, because you'll change them periodically. But an ordinance is establishing something that's perspective into the future. It's not something that's immediate, or that's, for example, if we said that we're going to pass a resolution tonight honoring everyone that's wearing a mask, that's just saying thank you, or it's an honor. It's over with the minute you get done with it. It's through. And that's what a resolution is. A resolution is just an expression or statement of a policy, of a consideration. We pass a resolution that we've got to tell Jeremy to get the people in to clean the carpet because it really looks dirty. That would be a resolution, because it's going to have to happen now, and it's going to be done as soon as the carpet's cleaned. It's a very definite period of time. It's not something that's going to be continually acted on time after time. There's another group of things called the charter ordinance, and a charter ordinance is how you came into existence. And a charter ordinance is a super ordinance in the sense that it It tells you how you're organized. For example, you went from a committee structure to a committee of the whole council structure. That's changing your charter ordinance. That takes a 2/3 vote of the body, because that's a statutory provision that the Wisconsin legislature, when they gave the city the ability to exist by charter ordinance, we adopted that charter ordinance, and if we change that, it has to have a supermajority. Charter ordinances don't get done very often, but they would be, if we went from alderman by district to alderman at large, or alderpersons, excuse me, at large, that would be a charter ordinance change. Those are the kind of things that require 2/3 votes, and they change the way you do things. They change the way the city is organized. Again, resolutions, as I told you before, they're things that you need to get done. We passed a resolution to hire the name of your company, Hodag Radio, to do our programs. That's a resolution. That's immediate. You pass it, they suddenly are doing things. That's not an ordinance. They don't get fined by how they do it or they don't do it. It's not an ongoing thing. It's a resolution. We passed a resolution, for example, which you did pass, to say we're going to change the way we all sit. We're going to change the structure of the room. That's a resolution. You go and you pass it, you do it. And then if you don't like it, you pass another resolution. Now, one of the things you should understand, too, is an ordinance, once it's passed, generally during that same legislative session, unless there's a compelling reason, you can't bring that ordinance back up to change the ordinance. Now, that's not always true, because there can be a compelling reason that you need to change an ordinance. And in those circumstances, you can waive kind of the Robert's rules as to ordinances. But generally, ordinances are for your legislative sessions, and your legislative sessions, as you know, are 2-year sessions. It goes from election to election, because you reorganize after every 2 years. You form a new council. That's a new council until the next election, and then you form another new council. So that's a differential there. I don't know if that helps you or makes it more difficult. Yes, Tom.
I would like to know more about what happens when we pass a resolution as a body and that resolution is not acted on.
Okay, so you pass a resolution, and let me use my cleaning the floor. And so Jeremy doesn't clean the floor. You passed a resolution. Then you'd come back as a body and say, okay, we passed a resolution 6 weeks ago that said Jeremy's supposed to clean the floor. Jeremy hasn't. I think we need to take action. So then you take action to probably punish Jeremy, to fine him, to call him before you. In other words, you can do something as a follow-up to theoretically the resolution not getting done. But there's nothing in the resolution itself that inherently creates a punishment. You'd have to do that. So if you passed a resolution that we're going to adjust our meetings till meet at 6 o'clock instead of, well, that'd have to be an ordinance because that's how you do business. If you had that we all have to wear shirts and ties, we pass a resolution, or we all have to wear hoodies, whatever, and nobody does it. You can't punish them for not doing it. You'd have to say, okay, I want a resolution saying if you don't do it next time, then we're going to have a punishment or something of that nature. And again, it's immediate action. I want this done. So that's what resolutions are generally for, if you want to take immediate action. Does that answer your question, Tom? Any other questions? I apologize for not wearing my sport coat. We kept going too long, so I didn't get down to my car.
I apologize for not wearing a tie.
I'll buy you.
Okay, with that, moving on to unfinished business. Number 7A, discuss/approve employee handbook. Rachel, if you could come up. So since this has been around for a couple of meetings now, have you heard any more feedback, good, bad comments from the employees?
Yes, so I touched base today, or I got word back. There's a couple of revisions, and I'm hoping we can look at them for consideration and still get approval. One, just want to make a comment on the handbook. There have not been any additional changes to it other than minor clerical, and then as well updating the safety shoe allowance to the $200 that we agreed on previously. Outside of that, this would be the first time that council is seeing all of the policies in completion, and that's where the revisions lie. So there's 3, and truly they're clerical. So in reference to Appendix B, page 33, I refer to Appendix A and the first bullet point that should say Appendix B. And then on Appendix C, page 36 in your booklets, it would be the 3rd bullet point down under personal use. There's a reference to section B through F. That should be removed. It's no longer a reference based on the updated document.
Just to be clear, remove,
The reference to C, section B, comma, B-F.
so incomplete, remove the whole reference?
Yes.
Okay.
It's no longer applicable. And then lastly, page 39 on Appendix C, looking at removing the record retention language close to the bottom there. All of that, it's actually redundant. All of that verbiage is contained on the back side of that page under email record retention policy. So the same verbiage is provided in both locations. It's really redundant. And that's it.
Was there any concerns by any of the employees or any?
No, because honestly, we didn't remove or change, take away any benefits. Those were the biggest causes of concern. So no.
Ms. Mikulowski?
I have an issue on page 17 under funeral leave.
Yes.
The second paragraph in its entirety, I don't feel is
And that would-
appropriate.
Okay, and that would be an addition, so that would be up to you all to determine whether or not that is a benefit we want to
Yeah,
increase.
I'm opposed to having funeral leave for a pet specifically, but also distant relatives and close friends, it's very hard to monitor that. So that entire paragraph I would like to be removed. Also on the first paragraph of the funeral leave, where it defines the relationships, it says in the event of the death of your spouse, significant other, child, grandchild, parent, grandparent, sibling, or a sibling's child or spouse. I think the siblings, child or spouse shouldn't be in there if aunt and uncle are also in there because it's the same relationship. So I would strike siblings, child, or spouse.
And that language was in the previous handbook, so it would be up to you all to determine as well. The only addition.
However, I would like to add the last sentence of that, where it says the foregoing family member categories include adoptive, step, and foster. I would also like to add in-laws. So if your
Okay.
mother or father-in-law pass, you still get the 3 days.
Rather than striking the part about sibling or a sibling's child or spouse, could we just add aunts and uncles? That way, I'm just from personal experience, somebody dies young, and that could be problematic for, I guess, a sibling's child or spouse, like my dad's. My uncle's son passes away, but my dad can't get off work even though he's his godfather, that kind of stuff. I think that'd just be kind of,
But it's not that you can't get off. You can take vacation if you want, or PTO, or however that is. This is just getting paid for the funeral.
And it's 3 days leave. I mean, that's all referencing 3 days of paid time off.
And then at what point do you stop the relatives? I mean, if you continue to do aunts and uncles, is it great aunts and uncles? You know what I mean? Is it?
well, I mean,
It's just-
you could make that case now with grandparents.
But there is no aunts and uncles on here.
Steve, what do you see as typical in other communities?
I don't think there is a typical. I think Rachel would agree with me. There,
I can tell you from working at the county does not have nieces, nephew, or it has nieces, nephews, but I don't believe, how does it? They don't have niece, nephew, aunts, or uncles for funeral leave.
Questioning, it says a leave of absence of up to 3 consecutive days. You can take vacation. Is that automatically authorized? Or like, is that a certainty? So somebody dies suddenly, does the city guarantee that that employee is going to get those 3 days off without loss of pay, assuming they take their vacation time?
They're actually taking funeral leave time,
And,
so it's a
but
different.
but that would be promised to them, like they would get that. Okay.
Yes.
Then that's,
Right,
that
but
resolves
it
the
doesn't
issue.
necessarily have to be that day, because further it says the leave may be split to allow for attendance of the date of the funeral if it's delayed.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify to making sure that, in this case, somebody passes away, the employer, we can't just go, no. I want to make sure that there is protection for the employee to get that time, whether it's split or whatever. So your whole point earlier about them being able to take vacation, that's fine. That basically it resolves my question. I was just confirming that we wouldn't hold that over an employee's head in the event they had a event like this happen.
Mr. Barnett?
I can see Alderperson Mikulowski's points quite clearly. I would just be concerned that we're not thinking about the possibility of these relationships, even though they're classified by law as a sibling or a sibling's child. What if you're raising that sibling's child?
Well, then that would be adoptive step or foster.
Not if they didn't adopt them by law. But they're just taking
You
care of
can
that person.
foster and it's not a guardianship.
Okay, that's my only concern, is that we're setting, albeit rare instance, but it's still a possibility that we're going to deny someone funeral leave for a child they're raising that may not be their own.
Just to be clear, Rachel, everything in here currently is what's been in the handbook since it was revised last, correct?
Minus the reference to significant other, and then if we do an add-in for in-laws that wasn't there previously. The sibling's child or spouse was in there previously, and then the additional language that's being requested to be removed is new.
Oh, Mr. Holt?
Thank you. I wanted to add to the discussion that it's important to keep in mind that this is a baseline, right? So discussions and negotiations, hearkening back to Stephen's point, are between a supervisor and an employee, right? So keeping in mind that it's that having something not in here, I mean, yes, it would be vacation time, but that this is a baseline. It's not going to be denying somebody access to going to a funeral for whatever. I'm thinking of the phrase, and I'm thinking in terms of clarity, and I think that Alder Mikulowski is as well, that we want clarity and consistency, right? So a close friend seems to me to be fraught with vagueness for a policy. So thinking about how we're going to word that.
And to be honest, I wouldn't even be opposed to having the niece, nephew, and uncle be the 1-day funeral leave instead of the 3-day.
Mr. Anderson?
Well, okay, I'd like to make a motion to approve this document with the changes that Rachel originally mentioned and with the deletion of the third from the bottom paragraph on page 15, begins in the death of a distant relative.
So just to clarify, page 15 of the employee handbook, which is page 17 of the council
17
packet.
is- Yeah.
Correct.
Of the packet. Just delete that one paragraph.
Holt, I will second that.
Okay. Ms. Mikulowski?
So Gerald, you want to say if your mother-in-law died, you wouldn't want 3 days funeral leave? Because that's what you're saying in this, if you don't include the in-laws.
Well, you can move to amend it. I mean, recently I faced the idea of what if my ex-wife dies, the mother of my children, I don't know. It's a question of how far we want to go, and that's what I'm proposing.
Ms. Mikulowski?
I would like to amend the motion to add in-laws.
We
Yeah.
did. Mr. Holt, second.
As the foregoing family member categories, is to include, add in-laws to that.
So just to be clear, on page 15 of the handbook, funeral leave in bold, in-laws is the very last word after, and foster relationships. Just to be,
Well, it would be step, foster, and in-law relationships.
correct. Is there a second? I'll second. Second by Mr. Kelly. Any discussions on the amendment? Not seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? Amendment passes. Going back to the original motion, any discussion? Not seeing none. All those in favor to approve the handbook as motioned?
Aye.
Just so everybody understands, you're voting for Rachel's changes and the change that was offered by Gerald as amended by Mikulowski, okay? Just so everybody understands what they're voting on, okay?
Okay, Mr. Holt, since we're still in mid-vote,
I was going to vote aye, but I was holding off until I
Okay.
listened to what our attorney said.
okay, so we did the ayes. Any abstains? Any nays? Motion passes. Handbook approved. As amended. Moving on to number 8, which is new business. We have A, discuss and approve common council meeting from November 14th.
I'm going to jump in real quick to some Scrivener errors that I would like to fix. In the Common Council minutes for 11:14, under 8B, change the word approve to accept.
Holt, I will make a motion to approve the common council meeting minutes of 11/14/22 with the provision of Scrivener's errors.
Barnett, second.
Any discussion? Not seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? Minutes are approved. Moving on to 8B, which is council minutes from special council meeting on 11/18.
To jump in one more time, to fix these to list the members that are both present and absent under roll call.
Holt, I'll make a motion to approve the special common council meeting minutes of 11/18/22.
Mikulowski, second.
Any discussion? Not seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? Minutes are approved. Moving on to 8C, discuss and approve 2023 step structure. That would be in your packet on page 56. So that would be the step structure based on code and where you fall on it for all city employees as indicated. Mr. Anderson?
So this reflects a 3% increase?
For cost of living, correct.
That's, are there any other type of changes?
So for the step structure, no, that would be the only for that. After this, we have a non-working resolution that's got some changes, but for the actual step structure, that would be the only change. Mr. Anderson?
I move approval of the step structure as presented.
Is there a second?
Halt second.
Any more discussion? Not seeing none. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Karen Mikulowski,
Aye.
Tom Kelly,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel, Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to 8D, which is discuss and approve non-union working resolution, which is it's a printout. So it's a 2-page which classifies the pay increases. The only other difference that I know of on here is we're bringing back longevity pay for non-union. This would bring it in line with what the 2 unions currently get, so it's treating everyone the same. I don't know if Rachel has anything to add to anything with this, or?
And council has a revised copyright, so there were some clerical.
Correct.
Okay. And hopefully you could tell what those changes were. But no, there were no additional benefits added in longevity other than longevity.
And then all this is funded by the approved budget that was voted on at the last council meeting. Mr. Anderson?
I'd like to move the approval of resolution number 2022-29, non-union working resolution, with the deletion of paragraph M.
Yeah, let me address that. Well, I gotta have a second first.
Mikulowski, second.
Okay, let me address that. I thought a little bit more about that, Gerald, since you and I talked. The thing that concerns is it says the resolution represents the entire agreement between the city and the non-union employees. Well, the reality is there are other aspects of the agreement between the city and the non-union employees. There are other things like the policy manual. There's other aspects of agreements that exist between employees of the city. So to use the word "the entire agreement" is not correct. And what I'm suggesting, and hear me out if you would please, is we say this resolution represents an agreement, just using an agreement between the city and the non-union employees, and provides for, and then I would say, rights and duties regarding employment of the employees listed herein. Any claims or employee benefits not specified or addressed in this resolution requires, and take out the word committee and it would read, requires council approval prior to the employee receiving such rights or benefits. That does give you some clarity, but it doesn't create a false sense. I don't know what you're thinking, Gerald, but I tried to take your comments and work them into a more workable statement.
I don't have any problem with that last sentence without the word committees, but the rest of it, we've gone to great lengths throughout the employee manual, whatever the term is, to say that this is at-will employment. These are the non-union employees we're talking about. We don't have a contract with them, so it doesn't seem like contract language belongs in here. It's really I mean, I'm not crazy about the idea, but the fact is that we get to dictate what the terms are. All this is spelling it out so everybody knows.
Yeah, I can't argue with that statement. This is the council dictating to the employees that these are the conditions.
Ms. Mikulowski?
Also under fringe benefits, D, the funeral leave, it needs to be the same as what's in the handbook.
So are you looking to amend Mr. Anderson's motion that you second or withdraw?
I would like to amend the motion to have the funeral leave under the non-union working resolution to match what's in the employee handbook.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mr. Anderson. Any discussion on the amendment? We're not seeing none. All those in favor on the amendment?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? Amendment passes. Going back to the original motion with the removal of only M. Ms. Jopek?
So just to clarify, Mr. Sorensen, so after his conversation about our dictating this policy, are you still for the adjustment of section M, or do you agree with Mr. Anderson that we should just delete it?
I think it makes no harm to delete it.
Okay.
It doesn't really say anything, so yeah, deleting it works fine.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Not seeing none. Clerk, please take the roll call.
Carrie McCloskey,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel, Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Leanne Felton, Tom Kelly.
Motion passes. Congrats, you got longevity back if you're a non-union employee. Moving on to E, discuss/approve purchase of a new ambulance. Mr. Bryan, what do you got to tell us? And thank you for supplying pretty pictures. That always helps me.
Well, they're not pretty, they're not colored.
It's easier to read that way.
Right?
So this is the second part of our flex grant that we received, the $89,000 from the state. We added into the capital purchase plan for next year, which is already approved for the purchase of this ambulance to cover the remaining cost. This ambulance, we put bids out, requests for bids out to 5 different companies. We got 2 bids back. The other 3 chose not to bid at all because there is a shortage on chassis for ambulances right now. And there's also some issues going on with some of the diesels. So this vehicle almost exactly mirrors our new 911 ambulance. So to build this ambulance, to have the 2 ambulances almost the same is advantageous to our crews so that they can get on from one ambulance to the next and they don't have to move things around. Tools, equipment, everything is consistent between the vehicles for the crews. So this is really kind of, we took 911 what it is now, requested the bids and the specs on that ambulance again, and Palmasol is the one that came out on top with the bid for it.
If approved, what's the timeline for taking delivery?
16 to 20 months.
I'm assuming you're looking to replace the current one and sell the current one we have?
Yeah, so 9.3 right now will be sold once we receive the new ambulance.
What are you expecting from a revenue from selling it?
The last one we sold, we got 20,000 out of it. So I would probably expect somewhere close to that again.
And then out of the 337,000, how much of that is the flex grant versus capital borrowing?
89,000 of it is a flex grant. So and then you could add the 20,000 from the ambulance that we sell.
Okay.
If we sell it for 20 or whatever we gain from it.
True. And then is there a down payment to reserve the purchase of this?
There's it in here. It doesn't say that there's down payment, but we will use the flex grant monies. Half of it's already been loaded into our account. Once we allocate those funds, we receive the second half of them, and then we would allocate those funds over to the ambulance for the rest of that down payment and be done with that.
So pretty much you're using the granted funds to order it. And then
Correct.
as we already approved the borrowing for next year, that would be our funding source for the remainder, as well as selling of current equipment.
Correct, yeah, they're so far out, it's important for us to get in line right now, because there's something like 400 agencies in the state that receive this flex grant funding. I don't know how many of those were for ambulances, but there is gonna be a large order for ambulances now, because a lot of other departments and agencies received flex grant funding for the ambulances. So we wanna get on the front end of that and be some of the first in line for this, so we can receive it within hopefully the 20 months.
Mr. Anderson?
Is there any problem with taking it out of next year's borrowing if it isn't delivered until the following year?
I don't believe so. Because the borrowing is we just take that as a loan. We have up to a couple years to actually draw it down. So,
Wendy says we have 3 years.
Mr. Barnett?
Barnett, I make a motion to approve purchase of a new ambulance in the amount of $337,393. You guys deserve it.
Mikulowski, second.
Any other discussion? Not seeing none, clerk, please take the roll call.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel, Carrie McLowski,
Aye.
Tom Kelly, Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to F. So for both A and B, these are two people currently serving on the Ethics Commission that I'm putting up for reappointment. They both showed interest, and one is the current chairman, which the new body would then elect whoever they want to be chair once they meet.
Holt, I'll make a motion to approve reappointments to the Ethics Committee of Michael Miller, term ending 4/2026, and Lynn Feldman, term ending 4/2026.
Jopek second.
Any discussion? Not seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? Motion approved. Moving on to G. So this is Downtown Revolving Works Loan Fund. Now this was represented by someone in a banking institute, two people from DRI and two people from the city. In the past, it has shown everyone from mayors to city administrators to all the people serving on this. It follows the life of this elected body, so it's a 2-year cycle. So my recommendation is we appoint Mr. Gerald Anderson as well as the city administrator to serve on this on behalf of the city.
Holt, I'll make a motion to approve appointments to the Downtown Works Revolving Loan Fund Committee of City Administrator, term ending 4/24, and Alderperson Gerald Anderson, term ending in 4/2024.
Jopek second.
Any discussion? Not seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? Motion passes. Moving. Oh, Mr. Anderson abstains due to it's for himself. Moving on to H. I refer first to Mr. Steve Sorensen. So I just refer to him first.
Discussion.
Or commission.
Yeah. We were looking into this because there was a billing submitted to the city for $1,200 for Public Arts Commission, and we went back and looked through the documentation, and we could find that the Arts Commission contract that the city had entered into, which was a service agreement in September of 2021, had a termination date established as of December 31st, 2021. And so the obligation to the Arts Commission would have ended as of that date of December 31st, 2021. And there's nothing subsequently that this board has done to reestablish or reinstitute or do anything with regard to the Arts Commission. Also, it was a little unusual that most of the committees or commissions that serve the city don't receive any compensation, so the $1,200 is what caught the city's administrative eye, so to speak, as to where that would be coming from, and that's why we tried to find a contract. We did in 2021 pay them $5,000 to get started and to do certain projects, but that was a one-time payment in 2021. And the contract basically suggests that they'll be on their own after that.
So the Art Commission's been around for about a year and a half. It's fully staffed, so none of the terms are up yet based on the cycle of forming it. So we're kind of looking for direction of, do we want to make a new contract? Do we want to leave it the way it was, where they're just, in effect, just like every other committee we have or commission? So it's just, since we had an invoice come in, we're just looking for direction of how you want us to move forward with this body. Mr. Barnett?
I would suggest having a conversation with the people involved with the Arts Commission first, find out exactly why they're billing that amount when they've already been given the 5,000. First, find out why they're billing it and what it's for. And then I think there needs to be a discussion on moving forward with an Arts Commission. What are the plans moving forward? Do we still think we need an Arts Commission? What's the viability of having an Arts Commission at this point? I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to be had before a final decision on an Arts Commission is made. Personally, I think if done right, an Arts Commission could be a good thing, but it's got to be done right. And I think that there needs to be more discussion on it.
Ms. Mikulowski?
I agree with everything Tom said. I would like to know, where they're coming from and what the future of this Arts Commission is going to look like.
So we can just put it on the agenda for the next meeting. Perfect. Done with discussion.
Moving on to I. So a couple council members brought up that they're looking at possibly wanting us to look into Chromebooks. This is somewhat of a holdover from the last body as well as current members. I'll let Austin go into a little bit more details. We did get some rough estimates of roughly $2,000 for purchasing of Chromebooks for all elected officials. From there, our hope is, if we're providing these, to reduce costs of not making, 82-page copies. So ironically, we pay about 12 cents per copy. So if we have 24 meetings a year and we have a 40-page document, the cost savings in printing will pay for the Chromebooks. So I'll let Mr. Austin go into more detail.
Yeah, so Tara kind of brought me up to speed on where we are with this discussion. She kind of priced out on Amazon, and she kind of priced them between about $198 to about $236 for Chromebooks. This will allow council to connect to their emails and receive their packets and other correspondence without the clerk's office having to make copies for those meetings. And then I think it can also fit into kind of making it more transparent for the public. So right now, when we create the packets and everything, the packets are printed on our website where they're able to view those packets. But if there are late editions, which there sometimes is, that come to the meeting, there's not a real good way of getting that out so the public is able to see that, where they're able to look at it during the live stream. They would pretty much have to come in and request to see what this document that only the council people are looking at and discussing are. So kind of some ideas that we bounced around between Tara and I were doing it all through Google Drive, where there is a folder created that's publicly accessible that the council members are able to see the agenda, see the packet, and then any late additions. All it would take is me dragging that file into that folder, and it's not only available for you all to see in live time, but it's available for the public to see at the same time. Plus just the cost savings of printing out these packets, because it is a pretty large undertaking and takes up a very large amount of time to go through, make sure everything's in there. Sometimes I forget to put things in there, so it'd be a nice way to double check that they all get in there, and cut drastically down on the amount of paper and printing that we are doing.
Mr. Holt?
I fully support this endeavor.
Mr. Barnett?
Yeah, I think we could probably save a few forests by going that route as well. My only question would be, does it come with solitaire?
You can Google solitaire and use it that way.
No, I in all honesty, I support this as well. I think it'd be, just moving on with the times, coming out of the dark ages, and You're right. This is a heck of an undertaking, especially stapling it and the amount of paper that's used to provide all this stuff. I think going digital is just, I think we're 20 years behind as it is. So I agree with it.
In addition to that, luckily the printer does staple for me, so I don't have to staple them. But what he does bring up a good point. Specifically, we would have to look into a policy in terms of how we kind of track these being returned at the council members' end of their term, as well as they don't come with a warranty and they do not include Office apps, so no PowerPoint, anything like that. It would have to be everything that's on like Google Sheets, Google Present, all that kind of stuff, which is really the same program, but there are limitations that come with Chromebooks. It's really mostly an internet machine as opposed to an actual PC, but for what we would use it for, it would be more than enough.
Mr. Jopek?
As far as I can testify to Chromebooks being accessible to a lot of those things, considering all the students in the school district use them to access all sorts of things, including games, Tom. My question is, what's the impact on the IT department? Like, what do they foresee as far as, passwords, logins? Do they foresee any issues with the IT element and us getting access to those on that end?
No, she was actually for it, just based on right now the way our email structure is set up, for information requests, she'd have to do all that same stuff. So from her point of view of having it all on our server and all connected makes a potential time savings. So she is for the move. Mr. Holt, I don't know if you still had anything.
I was going to ask a very similar question as far as policy for support and whose responsibility it would be, but that was the answer. Thanks.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, I'm all in favor of saving paper, but one of the things I like about having paper is you all know I like to pick out little things that need changing. I guess I'm assuming there's a way to do that on this system, so I will just have to be educated.
Yeah, and Google Docs, you do have a markup ability that you're able to highlight, do really the same thing that you would be able to do just writing on the paper.
So in a way, you could argue it's more efficient because then you could make your changes, email it back to Austin. He could then move forward versus having to come to City Hall to drop off a paper copy.
And in addition, if there are Scrivener errors, they're a lot quicker to do it that way as opposed to printing out incorrect things and then having to print out correct ones later on.
Ms. Michalowski?
Yeah, I had talked to Tara about this, and one of the main reasons why I wanted it is because I don't want to have to use my own personal device to get the emails from here or whatever. And I just think a big portion of it is for the transparency purposes of it. Not to mention the ease of it and how quickly we'd be able to get information to and from City Hall. So I'm in favor. So I would like to make a motion to have Tara.
Well, technically, it's only discuss.
You could make a motion to ask her to look into it and come back to us with a proposal.
With a proposal, that's what I was going to
Okay.
ask, is I would like Tara to come back with a proposal on costs. Thanks.
I'll second that.
So just because I'm a little literate with Chromebooks, I never had one. Is there any way to use that from a phone feature, like a FaceTime? That way elected officials don't have to use their own personal phone numbers?
Depending on the Chromebook, some of them do come with webcams, but then we would just have to set up Zoom rooms and use it that way.
Okay.
There is, and like you were talking about the Google Docs elements, there is like a Google Hangout equivalent of Zoom that is used regularly with, assuming you have a Chromebook with a camera on it.
But I'm assuming it won't eliminate the need for you guys to use your personal cell phone. It just eliminates some of the need for the complete use. Like you'd still have to have with the Chromebook a personal cell phone for residents who want to call versus FaceTime. So it bridges, doesn't solve, so to speak. Ms. Michalowski?
The intent is not to get rid of our phone numbers. It's just to be able to access our city email.
True. My mind was if we could kill two birds with one stone, where everything is controlled by the city servers. That way, if there's any freedom information requested, it's easy versus, elected official having to come in with their personal cell phone to give over text or phone logs, that kind of stuff. Was just the train of thought. So there was a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Not seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? Motion passes.
Could I grab whoever seconded? I did not hear that.
Yeah, I seconded that.
Okay, moving on to J. So just some background knowledge to how we got here. So, the J topic, 8J is discuss council chambers table arrangement. So after talking with Jim Hex as well as Jeremy, who does the maintenance on the building, we looked to change the seating arrangement. This is based on a couple different factors. One, the platform we had in back was not built up to code and was not safe. Two, by doing this, it's going to make the filming application setup and decrease easier, which kept the cost the same versus an increase in that contract. Because the hope is they're going to mount it on the wall. That way they have one site and they don't have to haul all this equipment in and out. It also makes it where, for most of you, you're sitting next to an older person who has a 2-year tenure, usually. So you're sitting where you have potentially a new alder, a 2-year tenure, a new alder, 2-year tenure, versus having one election cycle versus another, where it could be looking at odds. So we thought this would flow better. This also gives the opportunity for we could have more seating in here for more public to be present if needed. It also is a safety issue because before we had cords running across the section here where everyone could trip on them and fall, where now we're limited to 1 or 2, as well as longevity of said cords, standing on them. So that was part of the thought of why the layout became what it was. As far as whatever direction we want to move forward, I just ask we move quickly because minus the people sitting here, nobody cares. Not one elected body out there. I mean, when I voted, I didn't say I'm going to fix the seating arrangement or vote for me. So whatever we do, I just ask we move quickly and move on to solving city problems. Mr. Jopek?
I mean, not that I'm like you, I'm not really going to pick this hill to die on. I guess in opposition or a counter to that, and the only negative I've seen with it is the fact that not just me specifically, but I'm down here and I see there's no interaction with any of the other council members besides Eileen, which is nice, and Dave, because Eileen's not here, I can see Mr. Holt. That would be my own concern. Otherwise, I mean, I see all of your points, and again, I'm not really dying on a hill. I'm just expressing, I guess, a counter, a very small one.
Drew, Mr. Kelly?
I would agree with Steve. If I want to see Mr. Jopek, I have to go to the other side of the room. And that's where I was before. And Steve I had David Holt next to me and Steve right there. And we were close. We could read each other's body language. We could see what was going on. And now I have to lean forward to see Tom. I have to lean back to see Leanne. And it's an uncomfortable situation where we should be I don't want to say a circle, but in some sort of formation where we're interacting with each other, because we're not doing that now.
True. Mr. Holt?
Yeah. My initial frustration was exclusively with the lack of conversation with the body about it. However, with regard to the idea of being able to see each other and read each other's body language, I do think as a matter of procedure, it's important to note that under parliamentary procedure, we're actually supposed to address the chair. You're not actually supposed to address another alder directly. This current makeup of the council is for lack of a better way to phrase it, works a lot more smoothly than when I first got on council. And so that has not been a point of contention with whether or not people address directly towards another council member. So it hasn't been a problem. It hasn't been raised. I haven't made a point of order in years. But that's it's a fair statement to say that while I did appreciate being able to see people directly, what's most important is that we can hear what they're saying, which the microphones take care of when they are properly used. And under our parliamentary procedure, we're actually not supposed to be directly responding to each other. We're supposed to be speaking to the chair, which is you, and we can all see you.
Mr. Anderson?
Well, I agree somewhat with the parliamentary procedure argument, except that we are also functioning somewhat as a committee or a quasi-committee of the whole, or whatever we call it, and or an informal parliamentary body. And it doesn't mean that we should be yelling at each other directly, but it is, as Mr. Kelly said, useful to be able to see how people are reacting and what they're doing. And previously, I could see 6 out of the 7 other members. Now I can only see 2 most of the time. And yeah, you lean back a lot, so so sometimes I can see farther. But that feels like a loss to me. It's a much less collegial feeling, and if we're trying to improve working together, it seems like seeing each other is important. As far as the thing about having one group on one side and one group on the other, I don't care how you shuffle us around. If if there are 4 over there and 4 over there, it can be any group, any order. It just happened to be that way, I guess, but that can be mixed up.
Ms. Mikulowski, I don't know if you still...
I was just going to say, just simply due to the safety concerns of the cords and the platform that was back there, I understand what they're saying, but at the same time, I'm not making my decisions based on someone's body language or nor do I need to see them in order to speak to the chairman. So I think just safety measures alone and the fact that it's easier for our video technician to video, I'm not opposed to leaving it the way it is.
Ms. Barnett?
I think a lot of my fellow older people that were on the other side are upset because they can't see my glorious beard. So I think that, in all honesty,
Do we have a mirror in this building by chance?
I'll send pictures out. But I think the big thing is that there is an ordinance about the seating chart that is on the books, and it wasn't changed properly. If we brought that ordinance back about the seating arrangements, then I'm not sure how the rest of the body would feel about it. But at this point, I think we have a lot of important things to discuss for the city. I've seen city councils that are all in one line facing the audience. I've seen them in a circle with their backs to the audience. County board has their backs to, at least some of them have their backs to the audience, and until they're called up to speak and everything. So, there's 100 different ways you can lay out a chamber. I personally don't know what a good way would be. I'm good with either one, but I do think that doing it properly, it should have been done in the first place by amending the ordinance to rearrange the seating, since we do have an ordinance on the books about it.
By chance, from the documents we could, find there is no ordinance as a resolution. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I meant a resolution.
Okay. So just to clarify, because I was distracted during part of your presentation, in this scenario specifically,
In other words, he wasn't listening.
cough, does a resolution have to be changed or rewritten for this type of activity, since that elected body has now came and passed when a resolution was approved?
Yeah, the resolution was just for that period of time. It wouldn't have lasted for more than a session. But the point I think that the alderman is making, Tom's making, is that it probably should have been discussed before it was done, but that's water behind, the dam. So I think you right now are in a position of, if you want to change, somebody should make a motion to change. And if nobody makes a motion to change, it'll stay just the way it is, because the chair has apparently decided that's the way it's going to be, and you can challenge the chair, and there's a procedure for that. Yeah, I want to go back to my little table over here, but when I was all by myself, I liked that. But there's a reality that we do have a safety concern. That was the biggest thing I had. And it does work a lot better. But, the thing we talked about today, and I think I'll bring it up, is there's probably a lot of different ways to arrange the room. It isn't really an ideal room for a chamber of this type if you're not going to put your back. If you put your back to the audience, you could probably do a lot of things, because you could put the cameras up here. But I would, I can't tell you, I represent over the years probably 24 different municipalities, and the seating arrangements are all so different. And they all really depend on the room you're in. The county boardroom is a classic example of, and when I was in the county board, we sat in the theater, and everybody had to sit way up on the balcony to watch us. Boy, I'll tell you, nobody could see anybody else. But there were 48 of us on the county board, so, you have different systems. So, the answer to your question, and I know I've given you a long answer to a very short question, but since you didn't pay attention the last time I talked, is the resolution is probably dead at this point.
Any other discussion or motion, Mr. Kelly?
Yeah, I would make a motion that we further discuss the seating arrangements and figure out some way to get back not in a circle, but maybe in a V, some arrangement that we can come up with, and I would make that motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Sensing there might be a little bit of mixed feelings, clerk, please take the roll call.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Tom Kelly,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel, Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Karen Mikulowski.
I just want to be clear, this is just to make a discussion, then aye.
Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
David Holt.
I also want to make clear that this is simply continuing a conversation, but no action. Aye.
Motion passes.
To start.
Moving on to K, which is the 2023 council meeting schedule. So depending on what ordinance we look at, we get some conflicting results. To the best of our knowledge, per ordinance, we're supposed to meet the second and fourth Monday of every month. Where it gets a little weird is city observes holidays sometimes that fall onto that. I think it's inappropriate to tell a city employee that, hey, you have today off for a holiday, but come to council meeting, it's a good time. So we're looking at how we would want to move forward, since this upcoming year we're going to have conflict with the Christmas, break kind of holidays. So some of the thoughts the administration had was either we set the second and fourth Monday as a guideline, and then before the first of each year we bring the actual dates to vote on. That way we could tweak it based on observed holidays. The second thought would be is if a meeting falls on a holiday, we just cancel that meeting, and we could always call a special if needed or desired. So I was just kind of looking for how we want to move forward, since the current ordinance doesn't really play nice with calendar. Ms. Michalowski?
I guess, in my opinion, it would be best to just vote on the dates each year because they're going to change each year. So keep the second and fourth as, like it says, and then just this time of year vote for the next year's meetings, so that the public also has plenty of notice as to when the meetings will occur.
Mr. Holt?
Yeah, I agree. I think that it doesn't need a broad policy necessarily. It can be a matter of within a matter of weeks deciding whether we want to move a meeting to a subsequent day during the week, or we want to cancel a meeting. A lot of it has to do with how much work product is going on for those meetings, and as you pointed out, if we run into an issue, we can always call a special meeting.
Just to clarify, the clerk informed me, actually our ordinance is a holdover from before we went to the 2-meeting system. So technically our ordinance says we will meet at 6 o'clock the second Monday of each month. So I think either way we need to update the ordinance to reflect our current meeting schedule. Mr. Kelly?
We've already changed from the 26th of December to the 27th of December, so we're flexible, and all this really is a template that we can work off of. And I would make a motion to approve the 2023 council meeting schedule as presented.
On page 83 of the packet, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
Michalowski, second.
Any other discussion? Not seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All those abstain? Motion passes.
I would note that we will be bringing an ordinance amendment for you to get the ordinance up to date so that it does say the second and fourth. And I'll probably put language in that you'll vote annually to approve this calendar.
So now the excitement time. Mr. Mark Barden and Randy, what do you have for us regarding approve and discuss contract for Oneida Avenue water main materials? No pressure, Randy.
So we had received a number of bids for the materials contract. 3 were qualified bids. The lowest bid, though, was the least qualified. They did not have all the materials that we are seeking for the project. This is critical. Time is money in projects. You want to, once you start your day, get this done as quickly as possible, because every extra day can cost you. It can cost the city in time and money. So we narrowed it down to 2 other bidders. The difference monetarily was just $4,500 between them. We are going to go, well, I recommend we accept the bid for a company called Core & Main. They were slightly higher on the overall bid, but they can guarantee all the materials we're looking for before our start date. I have extensive experience working with both contractors and material providers. I've had number of good projects with Core & Main. And something else that is compelling is that Core & Main has stated that they have almost all the materials already on hand. The other contractor, Ferguson, has made the claim that they can deliver materials sequentially as we move along the project. They'll have the first set for the first phase of the project, then they'll deliver the rest consecutively. This is dangerous. This has always been a Achilles heel to a project, where once we're halfway into it, all of a sudden the product's not available material, and it sets us back. So I recommend we accept the bid for Core & Main on this.
Steve, I got a question for you. So hypothetically, in a scenario, I know a lot of grant funding through the DOT is subjected to us picking always the lowest bidder. do you see any concern with this scenario based on the guarantee of product versus not the guarantee of product?
Yeah, this is going to be funded with the Safe Water Grant from the Department of Natural Resources, and it's a state grant, and because of that, we have to follow the state guidelines. And the state guidelines say that you must take the lowest bidder unless you have reasons to support taking another bidder. In this case, we've spent probably 2 weeks of discussion about this issue, and I feel confident that we are making the right decision. The gap is about $4,500 between the two bidders that are legitimate as far as we're concerned. And to have the guarantee more than qualifies that bidder as a stronger bidder and more solid bidder. So my recommendation, along with the Director of Public Works, is to go along with the bidder, Kurzek, I think their name is, would be the bidder.
So that would be Core and Main for
Corey Main, excuse me, yeah.
For 650,000. Yeah. Core. Yeah, it'd be on page 85 to 3rd for 650,000. Randy, as just a question. So was this above what we estimated or budgeted, or below? How did these bids come back?
They were about even. We were a little higher. Yeah.
Hey, that sounds better. Thank you. Ms. Michalowski?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract to Core and Main, totaling $650,545.25.
Barnett, second.
Mr. Anderson?
Yeah, I just wondered if we could have a little explanation of why it matters what brand we get, and then also what is included in the alternate bid portion.
Not all brands are American-made, and that is typically a priority for an American contractor. Another is we like uniformity in the different parts we're using in the city. Tom is often faced with, when he's going to repair, say, a curb stop or a valve, if it is one that they do not have in stock, then this creates more of a hassle, more of a waiting time perhaps. So we always try, your goal is to always try to have uniformity in your parts. So those are the two big issues. Material that is used is critical. We often require brass or copper or ductile iron. So
The alternate bid portion, what does that include?
Sir, I'm sorry?
What's labeled as alternate bid?
The alternate bids are for the curb stops and different copper works that was going to be basically delivering to the services to the homes or their businesses.
Okay.
When you have trenches open for such as a water main or a sewer work, the optimum time to do anything else is while you have that trench open. So this is the time we want to, it's just a better value for the city that while we have a crew there, you've already paid your mobilization, you have your excavation performed, so now is when you are getting a better value if you try and do everything else you can possibly need to do underground. Otherwise, you're coming back to do repairs later and that costs extra. So.
And then the main bid includes not only pipes, but fittings of various kinds also.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more discussion. Since it's a dollar amount, clerk, please take the roll call.
Eileen Daniel, David Holt,
Aye.
Tom Kelly, Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Carrie Michalowski.
Aye.
Motion passes. Moving on to M, which is discuss and approve award a contract for Timber Drive project. Mr. Mark, what do we have here?
So this is the rebid of Timber Drive. We bid this out this spring. This is for the reconstruction from Coolidge to the bypass. This includes the reconstruction of the sanitary sewer. So this project has evolved through the years. It started as pulverizing and repave. The sanitary sewer is undersized, so it involved into a sanitary sewer replacement project, and there's some transite water main on Timber Drive, which is an asbestos cement pipe, fragile, just not a very good product. There's about 1,600 feet of that on Timber Drive between, say, Iverson and Timber Heights. So the way we bid this out, and there's base bid supplementals and a couple alternates in here. The base bid is for a complete street reconstruction from Coolidge to the bypass. The inclusion of the bike path from the bypass and then going back to Harvey. Replacement of all the sanitary sewer from Coolidge out to the bypass, and replacement of only the transite pipe, say 1,600 feet, and there's some smaller portions. You'll see a larger number than that 1,600 feet in there, but there's connections at intersections and whatnot. So that's the base bid. The alternate bid is all of that plus replacement of all the water main from Coolidge to the bypass. That's alternate one. Alternate two is for extending water and sewer across the bypass. So everybody knows this year DOT is going to be reconstructing the bypass in that intersection. So the city has the opportunity to take advantage of that and trench utilities across the bypass for future development. The other thing in here is the supplemental items. We have these on all of our contracts. With the supplemental items, these are items that we may run into. We don't anticipate, but you may run into them, such as rock removal, or supplemental backfill, as in if there's organics in the trenches, you want to get that out. You put granular material in, those kind of items. We don't anticipate using them, but we may use them, and the idea of the supplemental is to establish a price for those items. If you don't establish a price for them and you run into it, you have to negotiate those prices during construction, and they're typically more expensive when you negotiate them. So with all those, with alternates and supplemental, the bids were close enough that it alternates between contractors. So you notice I didn't recommend a contractor for the low bid because there is no apparent low bidder. And you'll see on page 2 of my recommendation letter, if you were to award the base bid only, Krushek is the low bidder. For those of you new to council, Krushek did the downtown. They did the downtown project in 2016. If you award the base bid and the supplemental, Musson is the low bidder. The base bid and the alternate one, Krushek. Base bid, alternate one, supplemental, Musson. And if you award everything, Krushek is the low bid. At the minimum, if we're looking at budget, I recommend the base bid plus the supplemental. One thing to keep in mind with that water main, we have no records of that water main, meaning it was probably put in the 70s. With the reconstruction of this road, you're looking at a 30-year road, so you need another 30 years out of that water main that was put in the 70s. And it may last, you might have some repairs, but ideally you would want to replace all those utilities at this time if you're looking for a 30-year life. That's based on budget. I'll let you guys decide that. The other with the alternate 2 is extending across the bypass. That is for future development, particularly with the sanitary. For water, getting it across, we have water main on North Shore Drive, and there's potential with the last council meeting of development up Foss Lake Road, North Shore. Ideally, if you're running water main up, you want to create a loop. So say, for instance, you have water main running down North Shore, you develop 200 acres on that side, your only source of water crossing the bypass is at North Shore Drive. So if that water main breaks, all those developments are out of water. So ideally, and this is any system, any water system, you want to create a loop in there. So having that crossing at the bypass and taking advantage of the situation with the lower cost, because DOT is working on that, is probably a good option for the city. I will qualify that we have to get approval from the DOT to coordinate with them, and it may come at some additional cost depending on what DOT will require to make that happen. But without budget concerns, I would be recommending awarding base bid, both alternates and supplemental.
Got a couple questions for you, Mark. So if we stop at base bid, alternate 1, and supplemental, so we would not be crossing utilities across the bypass, where would those utilities end? Are they going to end underneath the road where so development happens, we have to then dig up the brand new road to tie in, or are they going to be off to right of way or what have you?
They'll be in the right of way. So the sanitary sewer will end. There'll be one piece of 8-inch. There's a manhole right in the intersection, right in smack dab in the middle of the intersection in Timber Drive and the bypass. And there's a 200-foot stretch that extends to the west on Timber Drive, and it's on the south side of the curb on Timber. We would leave that 200, 300 feet, whatever that is, we'd leave that in, set a new manhole, and then it's all the way to Coolidge. Water main, we would bring up almost right to the existing sidewalk on the bypass, so that we can extend up a little further. For future development, if, say that's all you did, you didn't do alternate number 2, if there's development on the east side, you could still get across, but you wouldn't be able to open trench it. You'd have to bore underneath the Highway 17, which would come at a much greater expense.
So my second question, this might be you or more Steve. So the bids were competitive, which is good in most scenarios. The one concern I have is, let's say we do the base and supplemental, we dig it up and we find out, oh my, the pipe is bad underneath. If we were to do a change order to add on that additional water pipe, do we open ourselves up to legal jeopardy of, more or less change order, which would then change which contractor would get said work?
No,
Okay, just,
because you bid a job and you have the supplemental aspect of that job, and the supplemental would cover that additional work if you found conditions that required you to go further. So the answer is no.
okay, makes sense. Mr. Anderson?
If we go with the whole package, where does the money come from?
So we have a couple different funding sources. We've been awarded up to $318,000 for the bike trail. So that is a grant fund coming in. I believe we have $450,000 for LRIP.
Correct.
And then the remainder from a street point of view is about $750,000. So that would be the PRAP tax, would be funding that. The remainder of the utility work would come out of utility budget, which we do have cash on hand for, I believe. Am I missing anything, Mark or Wendy?
Wendy would have a better handle on how you'd pay for it. I'd design it. I can design anything. You guys got to figure out how to pay for it.
You just don't question how we pay. So either way, we have a funding source. Myself, I would, just because when you go across the bypass there's not a lot of real buildable good land. You're pretty much down to 2 parcels, and then down rest of sea is swamp. So if I had to vote, and I have the privilege of not because I don't vote, I would probably do to a $4,138,000 and leave it in the right of way on the other side due to no, in the near future, potential development coming. So, I mean, if we had a development agreement in place, I would say, yes, let's get across the bypass. But since we don't, I mean, we ran a water main 2,000 feet past Print Pack, and it's been sitting there for 8 years just chilling. So, only in the winter. Mr. Anderson?
It does seem like we have more development in motion in that direction than we have in the past. And that there are possibilities, and we ought to look into, be ready for all of them. I'd like to move approval of base bid plus alternate 1 plus alternate 2 plus supplemental in the amount of $4,305,423.
Mikulowski, second.
Any other discussion? Mr. Jopek?
So just to clarify, the direction that we're going, just because we don't have a map on hand, it's heading toward that parcel of land that the city annexed last meeting, correct?
No. So this is all utilities and road work from Coolidge to the bypass, and then we're taking utilities and taking them just to that corner lot that's kitty corner from the Farm and Fleet Development. So next to the ice arena. So all we're doing, if approved, is punching utilities past the bypass to that empty lot across from the ice arena.
But you're correct. You are going in that direction.
Okay, and so we're extending utilities under the bypass
And stopping.
across the street and stopping.
Correct.
But it's toward that parcel of land that we just annexed.
Within a mile, yes.
Okay.
So I mean, it's additional multiple
Well,
millions
and
of
and that's-
dollars to connect.
Right, and I'm just clarifying like all that. That's it. Just
Yep. Mr. Barnett?
And the theory in doing that is so that we, if by at some point, I'm gonna sneeze, do decide to build, we don't have to tear up a really nice, pretty road that's being put in there anyway.
Well, the concept is with the DOT, at this point, if a development were to happen there, we don't have to bore underneath, and it's slightly cheaper. The catch-22 you could always keep in hand is if someone wants to build there, we could pass that cost on to them. You know, so it's one of those where enticing that lot to be more shovel-ready. The other caveat to keep in mind is even if it is shovel-ready, they're still gonna have to put in a lift station, so there's still significant cost to build on that site. So,
Do we, I know you mentioned several funding sources, but do we have it in the budget for $4,305,423?
we do, because of the different pots it's coming from. My concern is depending on back how the bids come back from Oneida. I mean, we purchased the pipe only. You know, Oneida's a much bigger project, so I'm a little concerned that when you factor that and other capital improvements, it's gonna get tight really quick, I think. So that's the other reason why personally I'm erring on the side of caution and keeping a little bit more reserve in our utility budget.
That's what I'm that's why I'm asking if it's in the budget. So if we went this $4,305,000 route, that's gonna make it a little bit tighter for other developments.
Potentially anything for water utilities. So that could be anything from a lift station to utilities running out for other projects. Or if something were to break, because that fund is a utility fund, so anything that's a water utility cost qualifies for that fund. Mr. Jopek?
so at what extent, I mean, we're talking about the base bid, alternate 1, alternate 2, and supplemental at $4,305,000. At what point are we stretching it too much? Like, so just base bid and supplemental is what you said, Mr. Mayor. Is that kind of budgetarily, is that where we're safe to sit? Do you feel?
So for this project, we're safe no matter what. But when you look at the whole project of the Oneida as well as other potentials, I would recommend the $4,138,000. I just don't see the risk versus reward at this point of punching through the bypass based on no economic development at that particular location. The property that was annexed in a little while ago, last meeting, could be serviced from the hospital utilities. So there's no point in my mind of running a mile of utilities when we could run 1,500 feet. As far as other developments, they're on the inner side of the bypass. So punching across, I don't see personally the reward at this point with no development there on site. Mr. Holt?
I tend to agree, with all due respect to my colleague to the left here, you don't buy a truck for the boat that you might buy in the future. You buy a truck for the boat you have. I would agree. I think that the base bid plus the alt 1 and supplemental for 4.138 million would be what I would prefer.
Ms. Mikulowski?
The only problem I have is it's about a $200,000 difference, and I can't imagine that if we don't do the alternate 2, that it's going to cost less than that to reopen everything up, to connect it if we need it in the future. It would be a cost savings to do it now while everything's being dug up. Am I right, Tom?
It'd be about 400,000.
am I
So
right,
it's
Mark?
about half off, roughly, I would say.
Did you call me Dom?
I said,
I think so.
I looked at him and I said Tom, but I meant Mark.
Okay. It would be more expensive in the future. To the mayor's point with the sanitary, you're not going to serve much extending sanitary over there. You would need a lift station because we don't have the depth on timber to be able to serve much to the east, if anything. Coming off of North Shore, that manhole at Foss Lake Road and North Shore Drive is 30 feet deep. So that sanitary can be run all the way up to sea and still maintain a 10-foot depth up there. So you could serve Highway C from North Shore. The only thing that is a potential is the water. You want to create that loop. But yes, it would be more expensive in the future. You would not be ripping up the bypass because the DOT would not allow it. This is your only opportunity to trench across it. It would have to be bored underneath it in the future, which is at an added expense.
And I think for that reason, in my opinion, we need to go with the amount that Gerald suggested.
Mr. Barnett?
Charlie, I'm sorry, Mark. You said the water main was like from the 70s under there?
I was going to come out with a smarter comment, but yeah, that's what we assume. We have as-built drawings, so we've been here since the 80s. We don't have anything. All of our record drawings are on file. We don't have any records. So my assumption is it was put in the 70s.
On average, what is the life expectancy of something like that?
I'd say 60 years, and you're at 50 right now.
Okay. All right.
And it would be nice to be able to re-blacktop a road without having to worry about, utilities in 20 years, just to be able to do a mill and overlay.
I think, I think $200,000 difference is worth the.
I just want to clarify, though, there are no utilities going across the bypass now.
Yeah.
So.
Except for that water main.
No.
No, there's not even a water main.
That water main would be additional that has never been there.
Oh.
Correct. So just to
All
make
right.
sure you're.
No, yeah, I appreciate that.
Let me clarify that one more time. So the base bid and alternate one, if you award those, the water main will go up to the west side of the bypass.
Right.
Only in alternate two does both sanitary and water cross the bypass.
Okay.
Neither of which are in there right now. Sanitary sewer right now runs smack dab in the center of the bypass going north up to Chippewa, but it's from the center of the bypass heading west to Timber. There's nothing existing to the east.
So if that water main breaks, it won't affect the new road at all? I'm trying to wrap my head around how.
So pretty much, if you do the 4.1 million, we are replacing all water main completely to where it dead ends. If you do the 4.3, we're doing that, and we're going past the bypass, just additional spur. So there will be no old water main with either of those options. It's just, do we just replace what's existing, or do we keep going across the bypass?
And you don't feel that there's enough development possibilities to warrant going through the bypass with the water main right now?
At this time, correct.
But I think you got to point out the closed loop on the water. Right. I mean, I think that's what's getting lost here.
Well, the other thing to consider as well is you may extend that water main across the bypass and not need it for 20 years. So now that water main's 20 years older, and you're losing life on that as well. So if development is imminent where you'd need that water main, now's a good time to do it. If it's not in the near future, you may want to board across and,
You are not making this easy, Mark.
My job is not to make it easy on you guys.
Tom and Charlie's not doing a good job either, Ms. Michalowski.
But if I recall at our last meeting, we did annex a section in there that is expected to have some development over on Foss Lake. So,
Which is about 1,200 feet away from existing pipe versus a mile and a half.
right, but it would be a whole lot more expensive to connect it if we didn't go that extra across the bypass.
You're talking two different spurs.
I know I'm not. I
yeah.
understand that, but what I'm saying is if we don't go across the bypass, when the development happens, it's going to be more expensive, more than $200,000.
But just to clarify, not Foss Lake has no impact. It's only if that lot on that corner develops or anything down C.
I know it's not
So-
going that far, but
Okay.
with the
Yep.
water eventually will. That's what my point is.
So a good analogy, Mark, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. We built a house and we're potentially running electrical service out to our land, hoping we're going to build a garage. But instead of electrical, we're doing water. Hypothetically, that's a good, just for, it's very there. Okay, not seeing any other discussion since, can you repeat the motions for all? No?
Yeah, so the motion by Anderson to approve, and I just put my chicken scratch near the whole package for the $4,305,423 to, is it Krushek? And then
Yes.
Mikulowski's second is the current motion on the floor.
Okay, with that, clerk, please take the roll call.
David Holt,
No.
Stephen Jopek,
Nay.
Eileen Daniel, Carrie Mikulowski,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Nay.
Tom Kelly, Leanne Felton.
Nay.
Okay, I would entertain any other kind of motions. Mr. Holt?
I will make a motion to approve the project with the base bid plus alternate one plus supplemental for $4,138,995.63.
Jopek second.
Okay, any discussion on the new motion? Not seeing none, clerk, please take the roll call.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Carrie Mikulowski,
Aye.
Tom Kelly, Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel, Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Moving on to N. So apparently we own a railroad as the city of Rhinelander, so it's a very short line. On Highway 8 from the roundabout going out to 51, the DOT will be redoing that project this upcoming year. Part of it, since we own the crossing, they want us to pay for some of that, which since we own it, I think it's fair we should pay some. So they're picking up through federal funding 85% of the cost of replacing that, which means there's about 15% left that becomes a city share. So after talking, Randy and Tom was there, and we talked with the DOT. We agreed that 40,000 would be roughly that 15% share, and we agreed any cost additional that may arise, they will absorb. So pretty much, if we move forward, it would cost us a maximum of 40,000 to fix that. Now, the drawbacks, if we decide not to, is the DOT will redo the highway from from 51 to the railroad tracks and stop. And then in a couple years, they may continue from the railroad tracks to the roundabout, because the way the federal funding is structured, it has to be continuous. They can't jump. Another option we do have is we could rip up the tracks and just not have them there, and then they will do the whole project, which has pros and cons. Any kind of industrial business that has rail access will increase the value of their property, and the odds of them staying occupied go way up. So this is just, if we want to move forward, funding for this, we allocated from our 2023 borrowing as a funding source for this. Mr. Holt?
Yeah, were you done?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in favor of authorizing this. I do think that in terms of having the railroad. First of all, having the DOT completing the project, and second, having the rail crossing redone, keeping it there basically, in terms of the property value of a property that we get taxes for, and the attractiveness to industrial firms is worth it.
Mr. Anderson?
I basically agree with what was just said. I wondered, was there any effort made to get the current owner to contribute to this?
Currently, no. We are waiting to get to this step. The perk of owning the crossing is you could shut the crossing down. Is a perk. So if we were to move forward, we would be going to the property owner who has hookup potential and seeing if they would cost share with us.
So that's still a possibility.
Correct. Yeah, we haven't approached it since we first wanted to meet with DOT to firm up the number. Now that we have the number firmed up, due to we want to see the project move forward because they're looking to bid it out, just like we're bidding out our capital improvements. We wanted to get that going versus being the holdup. And now that if we were to move forward with approving this, it would be going for some cost sharing with that business. Ms. Michalowski?
Is there any legal repercussion of removing the railroad?
So that's a little gray. So when it was put in, the DOT informed us that we applied for some grant funding to put it in. Their belief is that funding is subject to the railroad being there. So if we were to take out the crossing, there would be some jeopardy of them coming back wanting some of that grant money back, even though it's been, since 92. So there's potential for us having to pay back ripping out that. I would also say if I would own a property with rail access and you cut me off, I might be saying I pay too much in taxes. But that's just me. So there's some other financial things that could be factored. Mr. Barnett?
I think that the taking it out would be more trouble than it's worth, as far as the people that use it, and we're going to have to do this either way, whether that company cost shares with us, but definitely would be good of them to do that. So I'm going to make a motion to approve improvements to Oneida County, Bradley, Rhinelander, North Rifle Road to STH 47 Railroad Crossing, not to exceed $40,000.
Anderson, second.
Any other discussion? Not seeing none, clerk, please take the roll call.
Carrie Michalowski,
Aye.
David Holt,
Aye.
Eileen Daniel, Stephen Jopek,
Aye.
Gerald Anderson,
Aye.
Thomas Barnett,
Aye.
Leanne Felton,
Aye.
Tom Kelly.
Aye.
Motion passes. Would entertain if we would like to go into closed session.
Barnett, I make a motion to go into closed session, if necessary, convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Stat Section 19.85, 1 sub CG, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility in deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. Discuss the status of city administrator hiring process, discuss litigation in which it is likely to become involved, adjourn closed session, and return to open session, take action as necessary.
Halt, second. The above stated purpose.
Clerk, please take the roll call.
Gerald Anderson. Aye. Stephen Jopek.
Aye.
Eileen Daniel. Carrie Michalowski.
Aye.
Tom Kelly.
Aye.
Thomas Barnett.
Aye.
David Holt.
Aye.
Leanne Felton.
Aye.
Motion approved. If we could take a 5-minute break, and we're going back into closed session at 7:56. It is 8:05. We are back from closed session with nothing to report. Moving on to number 10. Apparently, we don't have bullet point A for whatever reason, so we have B, C, D, E. No, I'm just kind of stalling for time. Any other future agenda items? Nothing else for future agenda items. With that, it is 8:06, meeting adjourned.